احنا سعداء جدا بيكم، وبرامجنا النهارده هتبقى متميزه جدا، ويوم بعد يوم بيبقى فيه برامج تانية، فاحنا سعداء بوجودكم وبشكركم على تواجدكم معنا. عندنا الكايرو اندستري دايز هتبقى مستمره وفيها نشاطات مختلفه جدا. عندنا الافلام المرممه، يهمني جدا ان حضراتكم تشوفوا مجموعه الافلام اللي احنا رممناها للسينما المصريه التي كانت سائدة في هذه الفترة وكانت لها صوتها العالي ونشاطاتها، ونتمنى أنها تعود مرة أخرى، إلى جانب كل الأنشطة اللي بتقام في المسرح الكبير. الأفلام اللي احنا جبناها هذا العام لجنة تحكيم متميزة جدا، فأنا سعيد بوجود حضراتكم وسعيد أنكم مهتمين بكل الندوات اللي هتدور هنا، ويهمني تواجدكم باستمرار في فعاليات الدورة 46. شكرا لحضراتكم، كل سنة وانتم طيبين، وبترك الحديث للجميع. اتفضلوا.
صباح الخير. احنا اولا اسفين ان احنا اتأخرنا في ان احنا نبتدي. عنوان الندوة النهاردة الترميم الرقمي، إحياء التراث البصري للسينما العربية، Digital Restoration Reviving Arab Cinema's Visual Heritage. ويشرفني جدا ان معايا 3 أساتذة كبار، 4 مهمين جدا في المجال ده. معانا الأستاذ حسين فهمي، وأعتقد أنه كلنا عارفين اهتمامه الكبير بترميم الأفلام. معانا أستاذ تامر السعيد. تامر السعيد هو مخرج، وهو المؤسس والمدير الفني لسيماتك Alternative Film Center. ومعانا الأستاذة شتيفاني شولت شتراتهاوس، هي Artistic Director of Arsenal The Institute of Film and Video in Berlin. ومعنا دكتور حسين الصواف، هو ريسيرشر باحث في السايكو اكوستكس، وبيشتغل مع مؤسسة جوسلين صعب في مارسيل، وهو مهتم تحديدا بترميم الصوت. هبتدي باني اسال استاذ حسين فهمي على الافلام ال10 اللي ترممت لمهرجان السنة دي، وكان نفسي أسأل حضرتك بيتم اختيار الأفلام اللي بتترمم دي على أساس إيه؟ يعني إشمعنى ال10 أفلام دول؟ وإيه البروسيس، إيه الطريقة اللي بتتبعوها في ترميم الأفلام دي يا حضرتك؟
شكرا لحضرتك. أنا عضو مجلس إدارة في الشركة القابضة لدور العرض والأفلام، اللي هي الشركة مسؤولة عن دور العرض، مسؤولة عن الأفلام المتواجدة في الشركة إلى جانب الاستوديوهات. فهذه الشركة تمتلك استوديوهات عديدة، تمتلك دور عرض في وسط البلد، وتمتلك مجموعة أفلام. عندما عينت عضو مجلس إدارة في هذه الشركة وجدت أن هناك حوالي مجموعة 1300 فيلم في حاجة إلى الترميم. هذه الأفلام هي قيمة وثروة قومية، ثروة للسينما، فكان لازم انها يتم ترميمها. وبالتالي توليت هذه المهمة انا مع الدكتور محمود عبد السميع، دكتور التصوير المتميز، مدير تصوير عظيم، وشكلنا احنا الاثنين مجموعة كانت بتهتم بترميم هذه الافلام. بيتم الاختيار بناء على قيمة واهمية الفيلم. هناك مجموعة كبيرة جدا من الافلام ملك الشركة، لها صيتها ولها مخرجينها العظام وكتابها الكبار. في أفلام بين القصرين، في فيلم السكرية لنجيب محفوظ، في كمان قصر الشوق لنجيب محفوظ إخراج حسن الإمام مخرج كبير، في فيلم الحرام لبركات، في فيلم شيء من الخوف لحسين كمال. يعني دي مجموعة من الأفلام اللي احنا لقينا أنها قيمتها كبيرة جدا ويجب أن احنا نبدأ بيها. فالعام الماضي بدأنا بالترميم 10 أفلام، وهذا العام رممنا 10 آخرين. فأنا وجدت أن مهرجان القاهرة السينمائي الدولي بلاتفورم مهم جدا لعرض هذه المجموعة من الأفلام، فبالتالي ابتديت أن أنا أعرض الأفلام دي باراليل مع أفلام المهرجان. هذه الأفلام موجودة في مسرح الهناجر، لها برنامجها، تستطيعوا حضراتكم أنكم توصلوا لغاية هناك وتشوفوها، وبتتعرض ببرنامج محدد هيبقى فيه 20 فيلم هذا العام. المجموعة اللي تم ترميمها العام الماضي إلى المجموعة التي رممت هذا العام. فكرة الترميم فكرة مهمة جدا، لأن الفيلم النهاردة أسلوبه تغير. خلاص كان الفيلم زمان 35 ملي وهذا الفيلم بيتحط في علب صفيح، وهذه العلب يجب ان تكون في ثلاجه في اسلوب. النهارده العالم تقدم، التكنولوجيا تغيرت جدا، فعشان نحافظ على هذه المجموعه من الافلام، ويمكن حضراتكم بتتفرجوا في افتتاح المهرجان انا بعرض الافلام قبل الترميم وما بعد الترميم، ففي دامج كبير جدا بيصيب هذه الافلام، يجب ان نحافظ عليها، فبتبتدي نقلبها ديجيتال عشان نقدر نعرضها بعد كده بشكل مميز. وده اللي بنعمله، والحقيقه رممنا مجموعه ممتازه، الى جانب ان احنا اضفنا اليها سوتيتر، يعني دايما في سبتايتل باللغه الانجليزيه عشان اكبر عدد ممكن من المشاهدين يتفرجوا عليها ويستمتعوا بهذه الاعمال العظيمه. ففكره الترميم فكره مهمه جدا، وده هو ده المستقبل، واحنا ماشيين في هذه الرحله الى ان يتم ترميم كل المجموعه اللي موجوده عندنا في الشركه، اللي هي مجموعه حوالي 1300 فيلم بس. فدي فكره الترميم، واساس الترميم هو الحفاظ على هذا التراث القيم.
زي ما استاذ حسين قال، يعني مهم قوي الحفاظ على التراث السينمائي بتاع مصر وكل الدول العربيه. هنتكلم على ده مع استاذ تامر واستاذ حسين واستاذ ستيفاني. انا بس كنت عايزه اشرح، يعني قبل ما ابتدي باستاذ تامر في سينماتك، احنا بنحس يعني كتير قوي مننا بيفتكر ان الترميم دي يعني حاجه بايظه بنصلحها، لكن في اختيارات كتير فنيه، في اختيارات اثيكال اخلاقيه في عمليه الترميم دي. في اسئله كتير، مين اللي بيرمم؟ هل المرممين العرب هم اللي بيعملوا الافلام العربي ولا لا؟ وهل ده يفرق في حاجه ولا ايه؟ هل مثلا هل شغلتنا ان احنا نخلي كل حاجه توب كواليتي حتى لو كان الفيلم الاصلي مش كده ولا لا؟ فدي شويه من الاسئله اللي نفسي نفكر فيها النهارده. فهبتدي باستاذ تامر السعيد اللي هو مؤسس سينماتك والمدير الفني.
شكرا جزيلا يا ماجي، وصباح الخير، وممتن للدعوة ولوجودي بينكم النهاردة. أنا هحاول ببرزنتيشن يعني قصيرة إن احنا نستعرض أو نشتبك مع الأسئلة المختلفة اللي ماجي طرحتها. سينماتك هو مركز الفيلم البديل، هو قائم في وسط القاهرة، واحنا بنشتغل من سنة 2012. شغلنا بالأساس هو دعم وتعزيز الأفلام المستقلة في مصر والمنطقة العربية. شغلنا بيتضمن حاجات مختلفة، منها التعامل مع الأرشيف، منها ازاي نخلق كرييتيف ونولج برودكشن، ازاي نستخدم الريسورسز اللي عندنا عشان نساعد في الكاباسيتي بيلدينج بتاع مجتمع السينما المستقله في المنطقه. كمان عندنا مختلف المبادرات اللي مرتبطه بالارشيف، واحده منهم هي وحده الترميم الرقمي. نعم، لا انا افتكرت ان طيب احنا دايما عندنا سؤال ليه why do we restore، يعني ايه الفكره من فكره ان احنا نريستور الافلام. بالنسبه لنا كان اولا احنا عندنا يعني سينماتك في علاقه كبيره مع الكوميونتي. اتخلق عنده ماده ارشيفيه ليها علاقه بتراث السينما المصريه، ومع الوقت ابتدى الارشيف ده يبقى مصدر للمعلومات ومصدر ان احنا نبني منه معرفه ونشاركه مع اخرين. مهتمين جدا بفكره ازاي انه الارشيف دوت يفعل والناس يكون عندها اكسس ليه وتقدر تتعلم منه وتتعرف على تراثها وتبني من خلاله سرد للماضي وللحاضر وللمستقبل. بالنسبه لنا الريستوريشن هو مش مجرد حفاظ على التراث، هو كمان اكتيفيشن للارشيف دوت، ويعني تفعيل ليه وخلق حوار حواليه. بالاضافه الى انه عاده الافلام العربيه لسنين طويله كانت بتترمم في مؤسسات غربيه، اللي هي حاجه يعني ليها علاقه باستعاده او امتلاك السرد. يعني في تصورنا انه الارشفه والترميم هي كمان فعل ثقافي مرتبط بان الناس تكون عندها القدره ان هي تستعيد السرديات الخاصه بثقافتها وتعبر عنها. ابتدينا نبني على الاسيتس اللي عندنا فيلم سكانر. الفيلم بيسكان الافلام من كل المقاسات، يعني بيقدر يسكان 8 وسوبر 8، 16 ملم و35، وحتى بعض الفورمات النادره جدا في التاريخ زي ال 9.5 ملم اللي هو كان موجود لوقت قليل جدا في تاريخ السينما. وهو سكانر معمول او مصمم عشان يتعامل مع المواد الارشيفيه، فهو بيقدر انه يحافظ على، يعني يحترم او يتعامل مع قد ايه الفيلم فقد مرونته بمرور الزمن، فبيحافظ على الفيلم ما بيخلوش يقدر يتقطع او ما بيحصلوش قطع، او فبالتالي الترميم نفسه ما بيساهمش في ان الماده نفسها يحصل لها ديكي. كمان عندنا وحدة كالر جريدنج متقدمة. بنشتغل أظن إن إحنا من الأماكن القليلة جدا في المنطقة كلها اللي بنقدر نعمل كالر جريدنج باندستري ستاندرد دي سي بي بروجيكتور على شاشة سينما كبيرة. عندنا معمل للافلام الانالوج بنقدر من خلاله، اتعلمنا من خلاله ازاي نتعامل مع وسيط الانالوج، اتعلمنا ازاي نقدر نعمل تحميض للافلام الانالوج، وفي كوميونتي من الممارسين او البراكتيشنرز يعني للفيلم الانالوج بيتعاملوا معانا. الناس تقدر تيجي تاخد افلام 16 او سوبر 8 ويقدروا يستخدموا الكاميرات بتاعتنا يصوروا بيها، وبعدين نقدر نحمضهم في المعمل، وبعدين نقدر نسكانهم عن طريق السكانر فيبقى عندهم نسخه ديجيتال ونسخه انالوج. وكمان المعرفه اللي اتبنت مع الوقت بالوسيط دوت، تعاملنا مع الانالوج خلانا نفهم احتياجنا كمان انه الترميم مش بس عشان نقدر نرمم الافلام ديجيتال، لازم نكون قادرين كمان نتعامل مع الاصل الانالوج بتاعها. حاجه كمان مهمه هو شبكه كبيره جدا من العلاقات اتبنت من خلال شغلنا الكتير. عندنا تعاونات مع معهد ارسنال، شتيفاني موجوده النهارده وسعيد بوجودها. عندنا تعاونات برضو مع الفياف، الانترناشونال فيدريشن اوف فيلم اركايفز. مؤخرا بقينا اعضاء في الفياف، فده سمح لنا ان احنا يكون عندنا اكسس لارشيفات سينمائيه في كل بلاد العالم تقريبا، اللي هي بتمكننا ان احنا لو عندنا فيلم نقدر ندور عليه ومش لاقيين منه نسخ عندنا في مصر، نقدر ندور عليه في الارشيفات المختلفه. عندنا طبعا علاقه وطيده بشبكه ناس، وهي شبكه الشاشات العربيه البديله، اللي هي تجمع لاكثر من 18 او 20 عضو من مختلف البلاد العربية، كلهم مهتمين بالتوزيع السينمائي وبالعروض السينمائية. عندنا كمان علاقات بجامعات كتيرة سواء بره مصر أو جوه مصر، اللي هي سمحت لنا إن احنا يكون عندنا أكسس لأبحاث تساعدنا في إن احنا نتعلم الترميم. أنا كمان بحكم إني بدرس في الجامعة الأمريكية، فده سمح لي إني أو سمح لنا إن إحنا نبني شبكة علاقات مع عدد كبير جدا من الباحثين اللي بيساعدونا إن إحنا نبني المعرفة دي والنوليدج ده. الترميم بالنسبة لنا قائم على مجموعة من المبادئ أو الأسس في شغلنا. أساسهم هو الأوثنتسيتي. الفكره انه زي ما ماجي قالت، التقدم التكنولوجي او التكنولوجيا بتسمح لنا النهارده ان احنا نقدر نجيب فيلم انتج مثلا في العشرينات او الثلاثينات، ونقدر نحسن في صورته ونوصلها ان هي توصل لنفس درجه جوده الصوره المنتجه النهارده. ده يتضمن ان احنا نقدر حتى ناخد الافلام الابيض واسود ونخليها افلام ملونه، نقدر نشيل كل العيوب التقنيه اللي جايه من الوسيط نفسه. الافلام الخام بيكون فيها جرينز او حبيبات، الحبيبات دي مثلا ما بقاش عندها نفس الوجود مع وسيط الديجيتال. احنا نقدر نشيل الجرينز او الترميم، ممكن يحسن في الصوره ويوصلها لاعلى درجه او اعلى جوده ممكنه. بالنسبه لنا احنا بنشوف انه الابروتش بتاعنا في الترميم هو تماما مختلف مع فكره ان احنا نوصل الفيلم لجوده الصوره الموجوده النهارده. بنحاول نحترم اللحظه اللي انتج فيها الفيلم ورؤيه صناعه. فبالتالي الترميم ما هواش فكره ان احنا نستخدم بس التكنولوجيا، فكره بالاساس هو البحث الكبير اللي حوالين الفيلم وحوالين الممارسه بتاعه صناعه، عشان نقدر نفهم هم كانوا عايزين يوصلوا لايه، هم اختيارهم لنوع الخام دوت كان مبني على ايه، كل خام ليه شخصيه، ازاي نحافظ على شخصيه الخام ديت في النسخه المرممه، بحيث ان احنا لما نتفرج على الفيلم يفضل الفيلم بيعكس كده الايرا او يعني اللحظه اللي انتج فيها. الفيلم اللي انتج سنه 58 يكون بيعكس جماليات الوقت ده، بيعكس رؤيه صناع الفيلم، بيعكس كمان القدره التكنولوجيه اللي العالم كان عندها في الوقت دوت. المساله دي بتبان ان هي يعني سهله كده في الكلام، لكن هي طبعا احيانا بتكون صعبه جدا نتيجه انه مفيش مصادر موجوده للبحث دوت. النقطه الثانيه هي بالاضافه لاحترام رؤيه الفنان وللإيرا، هي ان احنا ما نحاولش نإمبوز ذوقنا او رؤيتنا او تصوراتنا لايه هو اللي شكله احلى. احنا نحاول نحافظ على الفيلم في صورته اللي صنع بيها. لما جينا نفكر بالكاباسيتي اللي عندنا كلنا، لقينا ان احنا عندنا الايكويبمنت، عندنا السكانر، عندنا اكسس للافلام، عندنا علاقات بمجتمع كبير، بس ما عندناش الكاليبر. ما عندناش ساوند ريستوررز وايمج ريستوررز. ومن هنا كانت الفكره ان احنا نخلق ريماسترد هو تريننج بروجرام مدته 4 شهور عملناه في سيما تك. من خلاله دعينا 9 منتورز، يعني منتورز عشان يقدموا التريننج بروجرام ل 8 براكتيشنرز في تراك ترميم الصوت و8 في تراك ترميم الصوره. الحاجه اللي كانت مهمه بالنسبه للبرنامج ده ان هو كان بيجمع ما بين 3 حاجات. الحاجه الاولانيه الجزء البراكتيكال اللي ليه علاقه بان هم يتعلموا الادوات والتولز بتاعه الترميم، الادوات التكنولوجيه للترميم والبرامج المختلفه. الحاجه الثانيه ان هم يطبقوا ده على افلام فعلا بتترمم، يعني من خلال البرنامج رممنا فيلمين واللي قام بالترميم دوت هم المشاركين في البرنامج. والحاجه الثالثه هو ان ده كله يبقى بيحصل جوه فريم وورك بيراعي الجزء بتاع البحث والايثكس. يعني ان كان في جزء كبير جدا من البرنامج بيتكلم عن ازاي نستخلص الفيجن بتاعه صانع الفيلم، ايه هي الايثكس بتاعه الترميم، ازاي نحترم الايثكس دي، ازاي نخلق ورك فلو يساعد الفيلم ان هو يوصل لاصله وما يغيروش. البرنامج زي ما انتم شايفين هو بدأ من فبراير واستمر لغايه يونيو تقريبا. دي التراكات المختلفه زي ما قلت، ترميم الصوت وترميم الصوره والتعامل مع الوسائط الرقميه والتعامل مع الفيلم الانالوج والايثكس او الاخلاقيات الترميم والمقدمه عن الفيلم الخام. جزء من المشاركين اتعلموه هو اولا ان هم يبداوا من فكره التعامل مع الفيلم الخام، ازاي يفهموا الدمج ده بيحصل ازاي، وبالتالي يقدروا لما يتعاملوا معاه في الجزء الديجيتال يفكروا في الطريقه المناسبه لخلق مش عارف الكليكر. المنتورز كانوا موجودين، اخترنا منتورز يشاركونا نفس الرؤيه دي. كان من ضمنهم اللي موجوده هي دي جيوفانا فوساتي. جيوفانا فوساتي هي مؤلفه اهم كتاب مرتبط بفن بعمليه الترميم، اللي هو كتاب From Grain to Pixel، او من الحبيبيه الى البيكسل. هو اهم كتاب في المجال دوت. ليو هو التكنيكال دايركتور لسيماتيك، هو موجود معانا النهارده. فرانشيسكا كيلو هي المرممه الرئيسيه في سينياتيكا بولونيا، اللي هو من اهم مراكز الترميم في العالم، وهي مثلا اللي رممت فيلم الموميا للاستاذ شادي عبد السلام. ماجد نادر زميلنا ومخرج سينمائي، وكان مسؤول عن الجزء بتاع الانالوج. اختيارنا للمرمم الصوت، المنتور الصوت، انه يكون عربي، لان بالنسبه لنا انا شفت افلام كتيره جدا عربيه رممها مرممين، رمم الصوت فيها مرممين مش عرب، ونتيجه ان هم مش فاهمين اللغه كان في حروف بتطير، فبالتالي الحوار نفسه بيتغير. انا اسف ان انا قاعد كده بس عشان اشوف الصوره، بس مش قصدي. فاتعاملنا مع منذر الهاشم، وهو مرمم لبناني مقيم في باريس. خورخي بيكيه، وهو من اهم الاسماء النهارده في الكالر جريدنج. وماركوس راف وليزابونا رحمن، اللي كانوا جزء من تراك الاخلاقيات. ماركوس راف هو السكشن هيد اوف ذا اركايفال بروجكت في الارسنال، وليزابونا رحمن هي المسؤوله عن الساينتفك كوميتي في الفياف. البروفايل بتاع دورنا على ناس يكون عندهم خلفيه تعامل مع صوت وصوره، فكان في مجموعه من المونترين ومهندسين الصوت والمهتمين بالصوت والصوره بشكل كبير. في جزء كبير منهم موجودين النهارده، ويعني انا ممتن وسعيد بالتجربه دي معاهم، ولان هي كمان اتطورت، وهتشوفوا ازاي اتطورت بعد كده. البحث هو جزء اساسي. البحث ده ليه مصادر مختلفة، بندور في أرشيفات صناع الأفلام اللي بنرممها. ده أرشيف عطيات الأبنودي اللي هي كان أحد أفلامها فيلم أغنية توحة الحزينة، قمنا بترميمه من خلال البرنامج دوت. البحث بيسمح لنا إن احنا نتعرف على إزاي صانع الفيلم كان بيفكر. مثلا دي حالة مهمة جدا. الفيلم الثاني اللي رممناه هو فيلم المخرج السوداني حسين شريف، وهو انتزاع الكهرمان. والفيلم دوت مثلا لما في العادي انه شغلانه الكولوريست ان هو يماتش الالوان، بس لما قرينا الاوراق اللي سايبها حسين شريف عن انتزاع الكهرمان، اكتشفنا ان هو يقصد انه يخلي كل مشهد عنده شخصيه لونيه مختلفه. لو ما كناش قرينا ما كناش عملنا البحث وما كناش دورنا، كان ممكن نخون الرؤيه بتاعه صانع الافلام. فالبحث ده بيستغرق وقت طويل جدا ومجهود كبير جدا لتجميع المصادر. بنستخدم الاورال هيستوري، بندور في الوثائق، بنتصل بعائلات صناع الافلام عشان نقدر نفهم الطريقه اللي بيشتغلوا بيها. في ده الورك فلو بتاعنا. الفيلم الماتيريال بيوصل، نعمل البحث، نعمل طبعا باك اب للماتيريال ده، نبدا نعمل اسسمنت، نعرف نشوف نسبوت كل المشاكل اللي موجوده في الفيلم، ونقرر مع كل مشكله هنتعامل معاها ازاي. بنعمل ري اديت للريلز عشان نخلق منها الفيلم مره تانية، لان الفيلم بيجي لنا يعني كل ريل لوحده. وبعدين بنبدا نعمل العيوب تظهر اكتر، فيقدر المرممين يشوفوها ويشتغلوا عليها. وبعدين نبدا الفيلم يمشي في تراكين، تراك ترميم الصوره وترميم الصوت، ودايما في كواليتي كنترول عشان نراجع اول باول قد ايه المشاكل دي وازاي المشاكل دي بتتحل. عشان نوصل للمرحله الاخيره اللي هي الكالر جريدنج، ويبقى بالنهايه عندنا ريستورد فيرجن. انا هحاول بوريكم شويه تجارب للريستوريشن. ده مثلا من فيلم اغنيه توحة الحزينه قبل وبعد. طبعا لما بيكون في مثلا حركه او بيكون في حاجه فيها يكون في مثلا حاجه زي السنان، مش عارف اذا باينه ولا لا، بيكون صعب جدا ان احنا نحلها. المبدا الاساسي عندنا ان هو زي كده زياره المحميات، احنا لا بنزود حاجه على الفيلم ولا بناخد حاجه على الفيلم، فاذا بنرمم حاجه لازم نرممها من قلب الفيلم، مش ان احنا نزود لاير عليه، زي ما بنتعامل مع زياره اي محميه طبيعيه يعني. الشعر كمان بيكون صعب قوي. النتيجه انه في الاخر بقى عندنا نسختين مرممتين من فيلمين انتزاع الكهرمان واغنيه توحة الحزينه. دول فريق الترميم، وانا يعني بحييهم من هنا. التجربه دي خلتنا نفكر في ازاي ناخد دوت من اللحظه دي، يعني المجموعه اللي اشتغلت واتعلمت ازاي نقدر نستفيد من انتاجهم ده. اول حاجه عملناها هو تعاون مع افلام مصر العالميه. احنا حاليا بنرمم 4 افلام ليوسف شاهين: حدوته مصريه، العصفور، عوده الابن الضال، واسكندريه ليه. سعداء جدا بالتجربه مع انها جوه تايم فريم محدود جدا، بس بالمناسبه بعض الافلام دي تم ترميمها قبل كده، والترميم كانت النتيجه بتاعته سيئه، فاحنا بنعيد ترميم بعض الافلام دي. العصفور هو الفيلم الوحيد اللي بيترمم لاول مره، بس الافلام الثانيه كلها احنا بنعيد ترميمها نتيجه انه تجربه ترميمها قبل كده ما كانتش ناجحه. واحنا خلصنا تقريبا فيلمين، ويعني I can't wait يعني ان احنا نشاركهم مع الجمهور، لاني فخور جدا بالتجربه اللي قام بيها الشباب الرائع اللي قاعد على اليمين ده. من افلام يوسف شاهين فكرنا ان احنا نطلق مشروعنا الجديد اللي هو بوبينا، وهي الفكره منه ان احنا نطلق مشروع الغرض منه ترميم كل الليجندري وورك في المنطقه العربيه، كل الاعمال المهمه والتاريخيه في المنطقه العربيه. ده بيشتبك طبعا مع الكلام اللي قاله استاذ حسين عن ترميم جواهر السينما المصريه. حاليا بنرمم بقيه افلام عطيات الابنودي: الساندويتش، وبحار العطش، وايقاع الحياه، وحصان الطين، والاحلام الممكنه. هسيب شتيفاني تتكلم عن الحياه اليوميه، عن افلام عمر اميرالاي، لانه ده بروجكت شتيفاني والارسنال بداوا يشتغلوا عليه، وهم بكرم شديد دعونا ان احنا نكون جزء منه، فاحنا بنتعاون مع الارسنال اللي هم بداوا فكره ترميم افلام عمر اميرالاي المخرج السوري المشهور. واحب برضو اشير الى انه شبكه ناس قررت ان هي تساعد في المهمه ديت بان هي تخصص باحث مقيم في ما بين القاهره وبرلين عشان يساعد في عمل البحث عن افلام عمر اميرالاي. حاليا بنرمم كمان فيلم كاميروني، فيلم اوماج للمخرج جون ماريتينو، وهو واحد من جواهر السينما الافريقيه. وشكرا جزيلا.
اوكي، دلوقتي انا هتكلم انجليزي شويه لاني هسال ستيفاني. I would like to move on to you, Stephanie, that you can tell us a little bit about the work that you do in Arsenal, but I also would like to understand more from you why you think it's important for people to collaborate together from Egypt, Syria, Germany, and what does this collaboration allow for? What is transnationality? What does it mean? Why does it matter? And who does the film belong to once it's restored?
Yeah, thank you so much, and thank you, of course, to the festival for having me. It's wonderful to be here and have the chance to talk to you a little bit about our work panel on digital restoration of Arab cinema. So why would I be here as someone who represents Berlin-based film institution? I would like to go back a little bit to explain why. I will also then address the Miralai project that Tama just introduced briefly. By the way, Tama, what a wonderful presentation. I don't have that. I have a few images, but actually only half of them, because I put them together on my plane, and I don't know, I forgot half of them somewhere in the clouds. The Living Archive is basically our concept of how an archive should be understood, because it is, there are many archives where films just sit on shelves, but film actually only exist when you see them, when they're running through the projector. Now maybe my second image, therefore, is a little bit funny, because this is where we are based now. It's a former crematory, where we have our Living Archive. It is located there has been located there for 10 years already, but now we are building a new cinema also into one of the former morning halls. This will be the future Arsenal, opening in April. For those of you who knew us at Potsdamer Platz, this is our future. And this is just one image of our film archive. We have about 10,000 analog films, film prints from many, many different places. Lots of people ask us why we're doing all this archival work, since everything many people really believe is already exists already digitally. And this is so not true. This is, I mean, if we estimate, maybe, I don't know, there are different estimations, maybe 5 or maybe maximum, I would say 10% of the world's cinema heritage has been digitized so far. So if you really want to go deep into film history and research, you have to go analog. And so we have those viewing places, suites where people can come and watch analog films. If they're not professionals and don't know how to handle the material, then of course we assist them, because we have a huge responsibility. The footage is very fragile, but it is important that people have access and can watch them even if they're not yet digitized. And this is just to give you a little idea. This is an installation of an artist from Cairo, actually, Mohammed Gouad, who was on a Living Archive residency at the Arsenal many years ago. And he, during his stay over 3 months, he watched many of those films at those Steenbecks, those editing tables, viewing tables. And then afterwards, he connected all the films that he had watched with this blue thread. And this became such a tense net that at the end, when he was done with this installation, we could not enter our archive any longer. And I thought it was a very beautiful image, how, first of all, it showed us how many narratives exist in archives, depending on how you connect the films. And our archive is an international archive. So depending on how you connect them, how you curate them, you can build so many different narratives, and this is why our archive work is so important, because I think there is a need for new narratives in the world, and so this is what archives can help with. The Living Archive project, it started as a project for a 2-year project, and the reason was that towards, I don't know, maybe 20 years ago, or a bit more, we started to understand that our films are decaying and in a really bad condition, because over the time they just, even if you don't show them, the material changes, and so something had to be done. And but the reason, but our archive, as I mentioned, was very international. Why is it so international? We are not a national archive. There are national archives as well in Germany, but this is not, we do get government funding, but the archive is very special because it came out of a history of curating. The institution, Arsenal Institute for Film and Video Art, we are soon changing the name and make it a bit shorter, is more than 60 years old. It was founded in 1963, and already then, that was when, of course, the wall was still up, and many films were smuggled from the east to the west, and then given to us, not me personally yet, at that time, from not only the former East, but also many Latin American countries where there was a very strong political film community. And they, when they gave the films, when they happened to be shown in Berlin, they gave the films to the Arsenal in order to keep them there, to protect them from censorship in their countries of origin. And then in 1971, the first edition of the Berlinale Forum took place. Berlinale Forum is a section of the Berlin International Film Festival that we, the Arsenal, is running independently. As I said, the first year was 71, and from year one, the founders of the forum had a brilliant idea, from today's perspective even more so. They thought, why would we just bring so many films from all over the place? At that time, you can imagine, before the internet, was really difficult to locate them, and then bring them to Berlin to show them for 10 days and then send them back after the festival. So the idea was to use the very first public funding that they received to make German subtitled prints. And in analog times, that meant that you had to make an extra print to, because the subtitles are lasered into the print, or had been lasered. So, and those prints after the festival stayed with us, so that we could show them in the Arsenal, but also then give them to others in German-speaking countries, because that was the time when more and more film clubs and alternative cinemas emerged, and so they would then show the films that were shown in the forum with the German subtitled prints. So the archive and distribution and cinema curating always went hand in hand. And so those films, as I said, they stayed with us and then aged, and then decades later, like around 2000, a bit later, we understood that something had to be done. However, the problem was that heritage funding, or funding for the digitization of film heritage, then occurred. So there was public funding available in Germany, but only for national heritage. And yet our archive, this is the case in most countries, and our archive was not national heritage, even though one could argue, because of the German subtitle prints, the films played an important role in German cinema culture, so lots of people had seen them. So why not call them German, in some way, German heritage, if you understand it as a way of reception, not production, but reception. Anyway, so we didn't get any funding, and we had to find other solutions. And then at that time, somebody told me she was looking, back then it was an Indian film, she was looking for a film all over the place, an Indian film, and didn't find it in India or in UK, so then she found a print in our archive. And then she told us, do you know that your print is the only survival print worldwide? And then we understood, oh, wow, if we did not know, but if that is true, we have a completely different kind of responsibility for this film. And that gave me the idea of the Living Archive project. The idea was to invite people into the archive from outside the archive world, to research in the archive, and then think about project, artistic or curatorial or research projects. They got a little funding. We got production funding, because this is something that was available, funding for projects, artistic or curatorial projects. So we used then that funding to enable them to make their projects, and the films that they needed to be digitized for their projects, we digitized. So we found a way to indirectly use funding to start digitization. And that, let me see, I think the next, it is the right, okay, so I'll be back. This is the right presentation. So then, as a result, some people from outside of, let's say, the global north and the west approached us, because they had heard about our very collaborative way of thinking. We worked from then on only with partners. We only started restoring films in order to, as part of a artistic or curatorial project. And when people heard this in other countries, they approached us because, as Tama said, restoration for a long time was very much, well, it happened mostly in the global north, and also the decisions that are related to that were done in the West. And so that people understood that we have developed this idea of collaboration and approached us, and one of them was Studio Gat in Sudan. This is the studio of Gadala Gubara, a filmmaker who I think he passed away in 2008. And they wanted us to collaborate with them on that project because of this idea. It was not about who owns the films, it was really about how can we get something done together. And so we started restoring this when there was one film. This is Zara Gubara, his daughter, and there was one film actually about her. She was a famous swimmer, and her father filmed her in a swim competition, but the footage only existed without sound, so we invited her to live narrate the sound in our cinema. And this is also a way of researching collectively and in public, together with the audience. We invite. This is our another important issue. It's not only collaborations with partners. It's also to do different steps of the restoration project and the research project in public with the audience and in a very transparent way. But it's not only that. It's also we gain a lot from that, of course. So we digitized that archive and then brought it back to Sudan. But then the question is, when it comes to restitution and ownership, I think I should be faster. The question is, what do we give back? Because there is the material, the analog material, and then there is the digital files after the restoration. But more importantly, there are the rights. And very often, if those who restore films with their own money or funding from their own country, they then believe that they then have the rights on the films. Whereas we decided from the beginning on to give everything back, including like analog, digital films and the right. That's working, thanks. And in digital age, of course, you can do you can return films, but you can also keep copies. But the question is the rights again. And so we always, in all those projects, and there have been many more of them, we say the rights stay with you, but what we can offer is distribution rights, because through our networks we can help the films to get around and then share the income. And so this is what is how we always do it. Well, this is another case. Heba Farid from Cairo, she once approached me and asked me, told me about Hussein Sharif, another Sudanese filmmaker who lived in exile in Egypt, in Cairo, and passed away here. I think it also 2008, right, or 2004? 16, sorry. So he came earlier. And there was one of his films of Dust and Rubies that was never finished, and she, Heba, knew many people around his production, and she asked us to finish his film. And then I said, well, no, we cannot finish someone else's film. It's impossible, especially because Hussein Sharif was a very poetic, experimental filmmaker. Without him, there's no way. So but I found it interesting in terms of restoration, there's a thin line between restoration and the production of something new, because never, like a restoration can never look like the film as it used to be, so it's anyway something new. But we said, first of all, we can finish the film, but we can think collectively about what we do with it. And then we invited, for example, Temai Said, Talala Fifi, who played the main role in this film. He's also the founder of the Sudan Film Factory. Then Haitham Al-Wadari, an Egyptian writer who lives in Berlin. And of course, the daughter, Iman Hussein. And we invited them to, we watched all the material, the footage collectively, and then each of us would put together some film excerpts with some sound that we created and presented this on a panel and discussed this project. And this panel was filmed, and then Tama afterwards made a new film out of that footage. So this is also something that we have a lot of experience with, that by doing this collaborative archive work in collaboration with artistic projects, it also means that they add to the archive. So new films are added then, so we call this collective research and restoration. And then shortly after that, Suhaib Gasmelbari approached us, a Sudanese filmmaker who was working on his film talking about trees. Many of you probably have seen the film about the Sudanese film group. He finished the film, I think, in 2019. And the Sudanese film group made, in their early years, a lot of short films in different places where they studied. One of them, for example, in Potsdam, near Berlin, in the 60s, 1960s, Ibrahim Shaddad. And so he asked us if we could digitize the short films. Again, like this was in the context of the production of a new film, we decided to do this. We published this DVD, and it turns out that those films are very successful until today. The Sudanese film group, they are now here in Berlin, in Cairo, sorry, and so that the distribution of the films and the DVD is the restoration of films that have been made like really in the 60s, 70s, and 80s are now really very supporting their contemporary work in a very much. So, and then Amir Alai, Amir Alai was one of the filmmakers among whose films were shown in the forum. So we had prints of his films in our archive. By the way, also Yusuf Shaheen, like a few Arab films were shown in the forum, in the Berlinale. And Amir Alai made this one film that probably many of you know, Everyday Life in a Syrian Village. And our print was in very bad shape, and I was thinking, who should I contact to start a restoration project? And while I was still, I knew who I could have asked, but before I did that, the brother, actually, I got in touch with a brother, somebody connected us, who lived in Germany for 30 years, speaks fluently German, and he said, I have all his estate, and can you please take care of it? So wow, so all of a sudden, there everything was. And we tried to get funding. Sometimes we don't get funding, as I said earlier, from the Cultural Ministry for foreign films, but sometimes from the Foreign Ministry. At least we used to. Times have changed, unfortunately. It wasn't successful in the beginning, but anyway, we were thinking about with whom would we collaborate on that. And of course, there was Tama and Cinematech. We started, again, like to have some screenings in our archive festival, archive assembly, to make to create an audience, and then got in touch with Cinematech, and as you just saw, while we were discussing this, Cinematech was doing this workshop and really like getting equipped with everything that you need for restoration, and then it became clear why would then the restoration of the Amir Alai films should take place in Berlin, if there is a perfect place where it can be done in Cairo, in collaboration. And this is important because it's not only about, like when we talk about restitution, it's not only about bringing the films back and the rights back, it's even more so about the decision making. You said earlier there are choices involved in every restoration project, so those decisions should not be made solely by people from the West, but also not, but also located. They should be made here in an Arab context. So we will work on this restoration project not only together, but in Cairo with both of our teams. I think I stop here. It has been way too long anyway. Just maybe one thing that is, I think, could become very interesting. There will be the FIAF, Tama mentioned it, is every year doing a congress, a symposium as part of their congress. And the next one will take place in Rabat in Morocco, and it will focus on African and Arab film heritage. So for those of you who are interested, this is taking place the end of April, and we are very much looking forward for submissions and for papers. If you want to submit something or know people who want, let us know. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. أنا عارفة إن إحنا طولنا بس إحنا لازم نسمع حسين وفي نفس الوقت برضو عايزين ندي فرصة إن أنتوا تسألوا أسئلة ليها دعوة يمكن بالتمويل ليها دعوة بالصوت وغيره بس حسين ينفع briefly to tell us شوية what your work has been about and also the importance of sound in this whole يعني if you can shed light on that.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. So I'll try to be quick. I probably have too much text in my presentation, but there are some images as well. So I'd like to talk about how the Jocelyn Saab Association thinks about the restoration, film restoration, and I think a lot of things that I would say will resonate with what have been said already, which I think is a great point. So just quickly, the Jocelyn Saab Association was founded in 2019 after the French-Lebanese filmmaker Jocelyn Saab passed away. And the goal of the association was to preserve, restore, and distribute her works. And a lot of her film were in a bad state, so we had to restore them. And from the beginning, it has always been about, we always thought that those images, Arab images, had to be restored by Arab technicians for different reasons, because restoration is not just technical act, it's also a cultural act. And restoring those images by people to whom they mean something makes a lot of difference. To give some examples that are a bit like the one Taamer gave, we worked once on a Lebanese movie with a sound engineer, and he did restore the movie. He came to me, tell me the sound is better. I think I did a great job, but I have no idea if it's actually better because I cannot understand the language. So I do speak Arabic, not enough to make this presentation in Arabic, but this is the first. That was the first time I was confronted to this problem. We need people that know what those images mean to properly restore them. I have another example that was about a movie from a movie made by Jocelyn Saab that happens in Egypt, and it was restored, and the color grading was beautiful. The color was really great, but it was not the color that we can actually see here. So. Yeah, the main idea we have is that we really think those images should be restored by people who actually know what they mean. And to do so, the thing is that we think restoration, sorry, I thought I would be able to see that. So restoration is just about the images, it's also about the memory, the heritage they can give to the people. And nowadays, what happens is that it still happens a lot that Arab movies are sent to, for example, a European institution to be restored, and they are very expensive restoration. They can cost hundreds of thousands of euros, so they're not available for everyone, and sometimes those restoration may just cost more than the movie costs to be made. So it doesn't make sense in a way, and also it prevents more personal archive to be restored. But personal archive can hold a great meaning, historical meaning. So the idea here is that those institutions, they will choose also what they restore. And so they will choose the images that are shown to the Western world about the Arab world. And if we want to choose how we are represented, we think that we must seize the means to do so. And so we have to learn and share our collective facilities and knowledge and expertise to properly restore those images. So to do so, what the Jocelyn Saab Association, which I forgot to say is a non-profit organization, offers a free introductory workshop on film restoration. And the goal of those workshops is always to raise awareness of the challenges involved in restoration. So how do we think about restoration? How do we think about the ethical points? How we plan and develop such a project? And we always start by teaching about the analog material, because we're not used today to handle analog material, and we do not work with film anymore. Almost everything is made digital. But before using those digital tools to restore the images, we have to understand how they were made and also how they deteriorate with time, because understanding what can happen to these images will impact will really impact how we think about the restoration and how we tackle the different problematics we can be exposed to. So those workshops, the first one we made were supported by the Cinematic Suisse and FIAF. And basically the idea how we work is that when we have these workshops, the newly trained technician rejoin the association, work with us on movies, on restoring films, and they also afterward lead the new workshops. So today we have introduced about 80 people to the to the different questions regarding film restoration through 7 workshops. There are currently 2 workshops as well, one actually starting tomorrow here within the festival. And with those 2 workshops, there will be 30 more people that are introduced to the questions of film restoration and safeguarding the heritage. So all this work that the association tries to do also have, is that the right one? Yeah. Also have to do with the fact that those big Western institutions are interested and are investing in restoration, and especially and are also interested in restoration of Arab images. However, there might be so much more less, even if not at all interested in more modest, fragile, and lesser known archives, such as personal archives that, like I said, can hold a great historical meaning. And the aim of the association here would be to try to complement those efforts and supporting the unseen and endangered part of this Arab cinema heritage. Because if we leave this to great institutions that only put so much money in great classics, which is really important, we might just forget and lose those smaller archive that actually holds a great historical meaning. Sorry. Okay. Okay. So to give you some example of how the association tries to build upon this idea, so the association is present in France for practical reason. The archives of Justin Saab were stored in French institutions. So we had to be on site to get them out and try to work on it. But in next year, the association will open another non-profit structure called Maria, which will be about being both a digital and mechanical restoration laboratory. It will be designed as a training and community hub and will focus on several points, such as digital and physical restoration, the physical preservation and film handling, such as we'll acquire projectors to do some projection of personal archive in 16 and 8 millimeters film. And we are planning around, we will also like to play around this idea of living archive by proposing creative workshop on rushes and film editing. What I mean with that is that we want to get people to handle the material, the film, and it can sometimes be, people can be afraid to play with film because it's not something we're used to anymore, and we want people, artists and filmmakers, to reclaim those images and to do something with archives, because an archive about a film archive, of course there's a movie about the film, but also there's an untold story with the archive that we can unravel by searching for the research that was made by the director, looking into the paper archive, for example. And we can also give them a new life by doing something with the material when we have them, such as the rushes. For the association, we are lucky enough we have the rights on the material of Justin Saab, so we help when we are trying to get people to go back to handling analog materials. Another thing that the Maria Lab will ultimately try to do is to develop a film development lab, again in that idea of getting back to know how the material is used and how analog movies were made. And we also wish with the structure to provide more facilities. What I mean by that is that the movie that will be restored in the workshop starting tomorrow in Cairo is a movie by the Lebanese filmmakers George Nasser. And one of the persons involved in this project is a Lebanese woman that lives in Canada, and she was the only one that had access to a scanner because we didn't have any on site. So we had to send the copy there to be digitized so we can have a file on which we would work. And of course, this seems problematic, and we are looking into fundings to try and buy a scanner that would be held into Maraya Lab and made available for all the structure around us. So you can imagine, of course, that having such equipment on site will enable so much more projects. And lastly, you cannot see there here, but Maraya will buy a license of the Jazz software, which is a software to make a database and film archive database. And the idea, again, is to do that as a collective work, and this license will be shared with others film archives, such as Katsah, which is an archive of personal amateur movie in 16 and 8 millimeters around the Mediterranean Sea, and with Nelly Lecolines in Lebanon. And what's interesting with this database is that the people who made it are very open to feedback from the users to let it evolve, and we think that this is something that we should experiment with, because eventually we think we might be able with this tool to propose a proper collective Arabic database, which is also very important because when restoring movies, one part of the job is just doing research to find the material, and we don't have a proper database that everybody can access easily and to find the material they want to work on and they wish to safeguard and make available again. Another structure that was co-funded by the association is the Archive Circulation Initiative, which was funded by the association, by the Algerian Cinema Digital Archive and Mouja Films, which is a Tunisian production company. And the idea of that structure is to share all the knowledge, equipment, and expertise that we can have. The idea will be it already started, to cover the whole restoration chain. What I mean by that is that to help, to bring together people that can help each other to look for materials, to do research on this material, to understand its history, how it was made, where it comes from, to actually restore this material, and to provide some documentation through another partner in this archive that is a publishing house to publish books about what we found about the history of the material and how and what problem we encounter when restoring, for example, what challenges we encountered. This platform will also help us to distribute those movies, because if we restore them, it's of course to make them alive again and to allow people to see it. And so this platform can help us to distribute the movie, to screen them through partners, festival, and different platforms, and again to provide digital publication, for example, that will tell the history and the untold history of this material, and kind of make available all the research work that has to be made around archive before actually starting restoring it. And so if I had to summarize how we think about the restoration, we think that it has to be a collective work, because there are so many actors interested in engaging themselves in these problematics, but we don't necessarily all work together, and we have to, because we don't have the same expertise, we don't have the same equipment, we don't have the same facilities, but we all share a common goal, so we should really work together. We think it has to be educational through the workshop that we are trying to put in place to reach as many people as possible and to share the knowledge that we accumulate over time. And it has also, from our point of view, but it's already what Taamer said, for example, has to be practical. We have to understand the analog material to properly work on it and properly get it back to how great it was when it was made. Being a non-profit for us is a way of trying to reach as many people as possible. And also to make it available to younger generation that are interested in understanding, knowing this history, and to share it as well. And finally, of course, all of this is deeply rooted in cultural identity. So we are all part of the Arab world, but we all have also our own singularities. And that's a reason why we're also trying to propose as many workshops in as many Arab countries that we can. And yeah, I think I have to be quick, so thank you very much.